by the UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center for Asia Pacific, the Regional Collaboration Center for MENA and South Asia, and the NDC Partnership. My name is Juhi Bansal, and I'm the NDCs and LT-LEDs regional expert at the ARCC Asia Pacific, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping rules from our side. Please mute your microphones and turn off your camera unless you're speaking. During the question and answer session later on in the panel, please raise your virtual hand if you would like to take the floor. Or in the meantime, in case you have any other questions, please feel free to write the questions in the chat, and they will be picked up by the speakers and the panelists during the Q&A. And we actively encourage your engagement. The session itself will be recorded and shared on the UNFCCC websites, and it will be shared with the invitees who could not participate today. To also let you know, the objectives of this webinar today are basically to provide a platform as a number of development and implementation partners are providing support to countries in the region on various aspects of NDC preparation and implementation, such as data and analysis, policy and planning, finance and investment, capacity building, as well as stakeholder engagement. This webinar therefore aims to provide a platform for countries to hear from all of the support providers on the avenues of support available for the development of 2025 NDCs and to connect with them to access support as and when required. I will briefly go over the agenda today. The welcome and opening will have a recorded message from our Executive Secretary, Mr. Simon Steele. We will then have opening remarks from Mr. Stelios Pasmanjoglu, who's the manager at the Secretariat. We will have a brief session on CMA Decisions and GST outcomes from Mary, who is from RCC MENA and South Asia. We will have country experiences panel, where we will hear from representatives from Indonesia and Maldives. Moving on, we will then have the support panel, where we will hear from representatives from ESCAP, ADB, GISET, IRENA, NDC Partnership, UNDP, and UNEP. And for closing remarks, we're very grateful to have Mr. David McLaughlin-Carr, the Regional Director for Asia and Pacific from the UN Development Coordination Office. With no further ado, I would like to play the recorded message from our Executive Secretary.
I'm excited to speak to you today about putting together the third generation of nationally determined contributions, national climate targets and plans to implement them, or as many of my team are calling them, NDCs 3.0. I think these may be the most important documents to be produced in a multilateral context so far this century. They can be economic blueprints for each nation and help attract significant new investment in climate action and development. Building on the work done to date, including, wherever possible, even stronger 2030 targets. These new NDCs need to respond to our climate reality. The global stocktake showed both the significant progress we've made around the world and, unfortunately, how far we are off track. Without significant additional climate action, we'll blow through the target to limit global temperatures to 1.5 degrees. So these NDCs need to be more ambitious, covering more of each party's economy, and also more detailed, covering all greenhouse gases. For this to work, they need to be deeply embedded into national development plans. Different ministries, especially treasuries, need to input into them, understand them, and ultimately help determine them. This must be a process led by parties, although we are all here to help. And we don't have any time to waste. These new targets should be submitted 9 months before we meet in Belém for COP30. I understand that I am asking a lot, and it wouldn't be fair to make an ask like this without an offer. The global support community is geared up and ready to support you in your efforts to prepare new NDCs, and the UNFCCC Secretariat stands with you as your partner. Throughout this year, the UNFCCC Secretariat, in partnership with sister UN agencies, and over 50 other key players in the NDC support community, including development banks, bilateral agencies and think tanks, will prioritise efforts to support parties in preparing and communicating new NDCs by early 2025. We'll work with the resident coordinators to galvanise their political connections and promote action at country level. We'll engage parties to explain what is needed, how it can be achieved, and who can help. This event will provide you with crucial information on the support available to parties with a wide ecosystem of support partners. We look forward to working with you all. Together, we must turn the vision of Paris into reality. NDCs 3.0 are our last chance to course correct. I thank you for all your support.
With that message, we hear the urgency for the NDCs 3.0, and I would like to introduce now Mr. Stelios Pesmajoglu, the manager from the UNFCCC Secretariat, for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Julie. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, excellent. Fantastic. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here with you today at this very important event. My name is Stelios Pesmajoglu, and I am the manager of the subdivision of the UNFCCC Secretariat dealing with NDCs, LT-LEDs, and sectorial support. I will start by re-emphasizing the message from our Executive Secretary that 2025 is a critical year. This is the year that the nationally determined contributions mechanism of the Paris Agreement truly kicks into high gear. It is the year that countries have to submit new NDCs that are to be progressively more ambitious compared to the current ones. 2025 is the year that the global community needs to enhance its efforts to bend the emissions curve and to increase resilience in all parts of our planet. For many of you, this will be the third time that you are producing these documents. The work on NDCs is extremely valuable, and the experience and expertise that has been accumulated in ministries and government agencies over the last more than 10 years is a solid foundation to build upon. NDCs are not only geared towards raising ambition, but they are also the vehicles to signal the priorities of different countries. In this effort, we are guided by the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement, and we need to make sure that we keep the 1.5-degree goal within reach. To achieve this, NDCs must be technically sound, country-owned and country-driven, linked with sustainable development, fit for purpose, and most importantly, implementable and financeable. Over time, both countries and support providers have been enhancing their capacities to make those important synergies more effective and more actionable. In the context of the work on the first global stocktake under the Paris Agreement, the CMA, which is, of course, as you know, the Conference of the Parties serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement, invited organizations in a position to do so, and the UNFCCC Secretariat, including through its regional collaboration centers, to provide capacity building support for the preparation and communication of the next nationally determined contributions. The UNFCCC regional collaboration centers are uniquely positioned to, first of all, facilitate this regional coordination for the next round of NDCs, working together with regional partners and organizations. Second, they can facilitate support to countries and provide matchmaking platforms and opportunities for both NDC preparation and implementation. And third, they can elevate the regional and national priorities to the global stage, which are crucial for the effective implementation of NDCs. In today's webinar, you will hear from countries on their experiences and from support providers working on NDCs in your region. We encourage you to engage with the support community on both NDC implementation and preparation to have robust commitments, investment plans, and roadmaps in 2025 to accelerate climate action and sustainable development. Today's webinar is one in a series of events that RCCs will be organizing in 2024 and 2025 to support the road to NDC 3.0 in different regions. More information on future events will be provided in due course by the Secretariat and other partners. In closing, I would like to reiterate the message by the Executive Secretary that the Secretariat, its RCCs, and the support community stand ready to listen to you and to support you in the preparation and communication of NDCs that are country-owned, they mobilize finance, and they promote ambition and resilience. Finally, I would like to thank Zui and Mary, as well as all other colleagues at the RCC Asia and the Pacific and the RCC MENA in South Asia, and our colleagues from the NDC Partnership for their efforts in bringing us together today. I'm looking forward to the discussions during this webinar. Thank you very much. Back to you, Zui.
Thank you very much, Stelios, for those remarks. I think for the next section, I will hand over to Mary to go over the CMA decisions and the global stocktake.
Thank you so much, Joey, and let me again welcome all participants to the webinar for Asia. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mary, Senior Climate Action Specialist on NDCs and LT-LEDs in the RCC, MENA, and South Asia, and I'm very glad to be here with you today. So very briefly, I will give a quick overview of the CMA decision and the global stocktake outcomes that took place at COP28. So the outcome of the global stocktake, to give some context, included the collective progress on several elements, including mitigation, adaptation, and means of implementation. And the decision stipulated that despite overall progress, parties are not yet collectively on track to achieve the purpose of the Paris Agreement and its long-term goals. As such, the GST decision, after stating this urgency, also recommended several ways forward to enhance ambition, implementation, and support. As you can see here on the screen, there were elements related to mitigation, specifically on the urgent need to deepen the work on GHG emission reduction, as well as some elements on energy transition, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, fossil fuel, etc. On adaptation, there was a call to enhance action, enhance planning, and incorporate several elements moving forward to respond to the global goal on adaptation as well. On MOI, there was a request to scale up support and doubling adaptation finance, among other elements. And of course, the important work on loss and damage and just transition were also alluded to in the GST decision. Overall, the overall GST decision also called for enhanced international cooperation, stated the urgency for action, equity, and that all actions be informed by the best available science, and of course, contribute to sustainable development. This is in general trying to put in one slide over 190 paragraphs, but this is a quick overview of what is included in the outcome of the global stocktake. On NDCs specifically, the global stocktake decision stipulated recalled previous decisions. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yes, thank you so much. So in addition to recalling the previous NDC decisions, the outcome of the global stocktake also encouraged parties to come forward in the next round of NDCs with ambitious economy-wide emission reduction targets, covering all sectors, all greenhouse gas, as informed by science, and to be aligned with limiting global warming to 1.5. In addition to that, the decision also stated that invited parties to put in place new or intensify existing domestic arrangements to prepare and implement the successive NDCs. In addition to that, there was a recall to the several previous guidances to the NDCs, including both in the Paris Agreement and COP decisions, including the periodicity of the NDCs, by when NDCs should be submitted. The second round of NDCs should have an end date of 2035 and show a progression beyond the parties' current NDC and reflect the highest possible ambition. As many of you know, the ICTU information is required in the second round of NDC, and several parties in the Asia region have already submitted this information in their NDC update previously. There was also a call, a further encouragement to align the NDCs with the LTLEDs, and also for parties to make clear how the outcome of the GST has been informed by the outcome, how the NDCs have been informed by the outcome of the GST. And finally, there was a noting the capacity challenges of LDCs and SIDS in preparing and communicating NDCs. This is just a very quick overview of the previous guidances, but also what is new in the outcome of the global stocktake and what is informing this urgency in the next round of NDCs. Over to you, Juhi.
Thank you very much, Mary, for that quick overview. I understand there's a lot more that can be gone into, but we will wait to do that through the other webinars and workshops we plan to do through the year. Moving on to the country experiences panel. It is my pleasure now to give the floor to Indonesia and Maldives to share their experiences on key lessons learned during their NDC preparation and implementation, so that they can highlight the priority areas where they require support in developing the 2025 NDCs. We will hear about two key issues. First, what are the key lessons from the last round of NDCs that will inform the next round of NDCs? And what are the key areas and priorities where capacity building can enhance the next round of NDCs? So for this, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Yulia Suryanti, the Director of Climate Change Mitigation from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Indonesia. Ibu Yulia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Good evening, colleagues. I just want to be brief that Indonesia would like to inform that Indonesia already submit our first NDCs in 2016, and we already updated in 2021. And responding to the current COP decision in enhancing ambition, as well as to respond to align the NDC with our LTS or LEDs, LTS LCCR 2050. So we already submit our enhanced NDC in 2022, which have a target, the new target, that in 2030 we will be reducing the emission for the 31.89%, and for the unconditional scenarios, and 43.20% if for the conditional scenarios, compared to the business as usual scenarios. And this target can be achieved through implementing climate change mitigation actions in 5 sectors, as the energy, forestry and land use, waste, industrial processes and product use, and agriculture sectors. So efforts to achieve this NDC have been monitored and reported to the President of the Republic of Indonesia and every year. Referring to the greenhouse, the GHG inventory, which already published in 2023, it was identified that according to the calculation, at the national inventory, the reduction, the achievement of the emission reduction for the 2022 was 573.95 million tons of CO2, and amounting to 587.81 million tons of CO2 for 2021, with the energy sector with a number of 75 tons of CO2 equivalent and 91 point something tons CO2 equivalent consecutively. So regarding the objective of this session, so we would like to share our experiences in lesson learned, and as well as to highlight the criteria for support that the stocktake and identification for the source of GHG relevant to policy as modalities is challenging for us, especially if we're talking for about the third generation of NDCs, as well as how to raise the ambition. So for the new potential for mitigation action, for example, so we will have to have this stocktake and identification steps is crucial for us, as well as for the identification of potential action, which will be then added for our enhanced ambition in under the NDCs. And the other thing is that through the step for baseline and target, so we have the scenarios, the business as usual scenarios, and refer to the scientifically based scenarios. So we will have this the projection using the models and as well as for the assumption. So this is already challenges as well for us, and especially for the monitoring this NDC implementation, because Indonesia is a huge country and we have a bit complicated institution or governance nowadays, and we have these challenges as well for having all the activities under the NDC being monitored as well as being verified. So in terms of support, so I think we will need the support if we're talking about the third generation of NDC as well as for the second NDCs in 2025. So I think we will still need support for the scientific peace areas, especially in terms of the new mandate of 1991 reference years as mandated by COP, the last COP, as well as for the MRC processes and its measurements. So that's still we still need the support for that kind of areas, and especially for the adaptation elements, because Indonesia already put the adaptation elements into our NDC from the first until the enhanced NDC. So it is a challenging for us for having the measurement indicator for enhancing adaptive capacity as well as reducing the climate vulnerability. And this is also relating to the current decision on global goal on adaptation. And I just want to remind all colleagues that we already and we have the mandate in this 2024, in the year of 2024, that we all have to submit our BTR, our first BTR. And to be honest, this I mean the CRT and the CTS already adopted and decided to the decision. It's a challenges for us how to implement, how to put that into this BTR, into the first BTR, knowing that the limitation of our capacities. So that's all, Julie. So I'll be back to you. Thank you, Khalid.
Thank you very much, Ibu Yulia. We understand there were some audio difficulties to hear them, but if I understood you correctly, I understand that Indonesia has already progressed quite well in terms of understanding the stocktake and identifying priority actions from its previous NDC, from its enhanced NDC, and it's focusing on baseline and scenario processes. And now in terms of support, you'll be focusing more on the scientific and technological processes, looking at the MRV and the scientific baselines of your new NDC. Thank you also for pointing out the importance of looking at adaptation elements and how that ties in with the NDC process as well. And we do understand that countries are at this moment facing the challenge of having to prepare the BTRs, as well as the NDCs and the other communications and documents that are required to be submitted. Thank you very much. We will, of course, keep in touch and keep hearing from Indonesia what they're doing. Now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Ahmad Wahid, the Director from the Climate Change Department, Ministry of Climate Change, Environment and Energy from Maldives.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and Ramadan Kareem to all those who are observing the month. And it's glad to be here with you today. My name is Ahmad Wahid, and I'm from the Climate Change Department of the Maldives Ministry of Environment. As we all know, NDCs are important element of the Paris Agreement and the achievements of its long-term objectives. The NDCs or action plans contain contributions of the country's efforts to reduce national emissions and also measures to adapt to the climate change impacts. Now, I would like to go into some more details about the Maldives NDC and our experiences, as well as the priorities while we embark on preparing our next NDC. In case of Maldives, we have so far submitted 2 NDCs. I think that's already there on the slide. The first one is in 2015 and the updated NDC in 2020. In both NDCs, we have made commitments to reduce the emissions and increase our efforts towards more mitigation actions. in mitigation actions or interventions, which are very much linked to the support. So you can see the targets are very much linked to the support that we are expecting from the donors. At the same time, we have demonstrated our efforts to reduce vulnerabilities and risks faced in our communities and build more sustainable and resilient future for the vulnerable communities. The NDC also includes cross-cutting sectors such as finance, technology, capacity building, which are essential to achieve our targets. Next slide, please. And this is about the preparation process, and I will very briefly highlight the process. We have the reviews. We normally review the sectoral plans, and we do consult with stakeholders, and we had some consultations, regional meetings in the atolls, as well as we analyzed the assessments. We conducted analysis assessments, especially while setting the mitigation targets. Also, we review the manifestos mainly with the governments who are taking office of the presidency, and we also conduct the feedback sessions where we get some public feedback. So these steps are mainly the main steps that we take while preparing the NDCs. Next, please. I had two questions. The one was on lessons learned, and I think the first thing I would like to highlight here is the issues of data fragmentation. Although we do have lots of data, the fragmentation is something that we quite often see as a challenge. The integrated planning and the institution capacities also remains one of the major challenges in the NDC process. This has been the case for the past two NDC development processes. And the major gaps on availability of required resources, mainly the finance to implement the NDC actions. As we have NDC action plans as well as these sectoral roadmaps, we often face the issue of unavailability of resources to implement these actions or towards the support that we are not having the support to implement those actions. And the sectoral mainstream still remains a challenge as climate change is reporting and related work is very much seen as an issue belongs to climate change focal point. So we often have challenges towards getting buy-in from our sectoral agencies, because as I mentioned, the climate change still many people see it's a matter of the climate change focal points. The political ambition versus the real ambition. Sometimes there is a lot of lobby to go for a higher ambition, which is not only limited to the national level, but we also get external pressure also to go for more higher ambitious targets, which are not always realistic in terms of achieving the targets. And importance of utilizing existing national systems. This is something I would like to highlight, because if very often sometimes we want to create new systems, but I think while we consider the MRE systems, it's also good to see what are the systems exist in the country that can be benefited for having these monitoring systems. The next slide. Next, yeah. While we embark on our third NDC, the capacity gaps are one of the key things that we still need to emphasize on, the human resource as well as the institutional capacity, which we need to invest a lot on this capacity, filling those capacity gaps. The economic analysis is quite important, especially indicating the economic growth and challenges in achieving the NDC targets. I think we cannot go for random targets without knowing the economic situation and also the forecast as well. The investment plans and project pipelines are quite important, because if we want to invest on the actions or the projects, we need to have a clear investment plans and project pipelines. The economic diversification is important. That is something that country like Maldives, especially the country like Maldives, it's important because we depend a lot on the tourism. So we have to see other sectors, whether there are opportunities and what can be done to diversify the economy while we try to achieve the NDC targets. The emission trajectories and mitigation potential is something important that can be done through modeling or other means. There could be some research avenues where we could go to do the trajectories. An enhancement of vulnerabilities and risk assessments. Although we are doing this, we need to do more enhancement works while we are going for the third NDC. This is important because the adaptation and resilience is important part of our NDC. And also we found that strengthen the synergies between NDC and national planning is important. This is something that we have to go hand in hand, and because lots of actions in the NDCs are also linked to the national planning and the sectoral development works as well. So these are the points that I wanted to highlight from myself. Thank you. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wahid. I think it's very important to note that some of the issues that we hear very commonly from countries do include data fragmentation and lack of institutional capacities, and the importance for integrated planning and coordinated planning for something like NDCs. Thank you for also pointing out the need for finance as well as sectoral mainstreaming. And we also know that political ambition can very often not be aligned with the real ambition of the country. I think I will also thank you for already pointing out areas of support where development partners can already reach out to Maldives and highlight and join hands where they can, including investment plans and capacity building gaps, as well as economic diversification and technical assessments. Also, please, thank you for pointing out the synergies between NDCs and national planning, because indeed, NDCs should be country-driven and country-led. So now, without taking much more time, I will hand over to Mary to move to the support providers panel. Mary, over to you.
Thank you so much, Juhi. And again, let me thank Indonesia and Maldives for their very valuable contribution. We will now be moving to the partners panel. As you know, the Global Stocktake invited organizations in a position to do so, the Secretariat and its regional collaboration centers, to provide capacity building support for the preparation and communication of the next NDCs. And this is the context today for the intervention of our very distinguished panelists. So what we will hear from today, specifically for the Asia region, what is the support available and on offer for the next round of NDCs, and how can countries in Asia reach out to the partners? I would like to kindly ask our panelists today to keep their interventions short and under 3 minutes in order to make time for the questions and answers session at the end of the panel. Therefore, without further ado, it is my pleasure to give the floor to Aneta Nikolova, Climate Policy Lead, Environment and Development Policy Section at the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, to give regional context and insights, as well as information on support for NDCs. Aneta, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mary, and colleagues from UNFCCC Regional Collaborating Center, both centers, right? We could go straight to the next slide. I just want to start with this opening, and thank you for actually helping me with the presentation. I just want to start with this opening statement that our Asia-Pacific region actually performs poorly on the environmental SDGs and starkly on SDG 13. So we here look at climate action jointly with the SDGs, and I will explain a little bit furthermore. The next slide, please. Just for those that do not know what ESCAP means, we're the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. Our division is on environment and development. So we look at the environmental issues in an integrated economic and social aspects, and also in the framework of the SDGs. We look at climate action and clean air. And this corresponds to SDG 13, but to other SDGs as well. We look also at nature for people, cities for sustainable future, sustainable transitions, and these are all interconnected and have climate aspects as well. Next slide, please. Yes, so how do we work? We have intergovernmental component. This is our commission session, Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development, and our committees. We also do publish research and in the climate area jointly with all our partners. And we provide technical assistance and capacity building. Next slide, please. And we work with national governments, academia, civil society, youth organizations, private sector, and UN agencies. Now we can go to the next slide, where I would talk about the region is actually quite vast. It includes Pacific, it includes countries that are already in your MENA sub-region, region. Yes, so we have 53 member states. What I wanted to show you today is a little bit of the findings of the 2023 review of climate ambition in Asia Pacific. So ESCAP and UNEP, we are co-chairs of this issues-based coalition, which puts together UN agencies working in the Asia Pacific region to really raise ambition for climate action. And we have produced 4 of these reviews, and this is the biggest partnership ever. We have there UNEP and ESCAP, of course. We have UNFCCC Regional Collaborating Center. We have UN Women, UN ILO, and as well as we have the yes, UNIDO, of course, sorry for that. But we also did go through a peer review with all the other members of the IBC. The IBC also presents to the regional coordination platform, which includes all UN regional coordinators, resident coordinators in all the member states. Next slide, please. So, okay, let's look at our region. 2/3 of the world population lives here. We also have 2/3 of the world youth, but we also face enormous problems with our challenges. The impact of climate change is huge. 8 of 10 countries worldwide that are most severely affected by climate-induced disasters are in our region. And the frequency is increasing and predictable. Temperatures are rising. Next slide, please. So the last 2023 review found out that the current NDC commitments are insufficient to deliver on the 1.5 degree pathway. And why is that? Because not that because the ambition in the countries is there, it's just because of the way the scenarios have been designed. There are quite a number of countries that are looking at the bio-based scenario, so the reductions actually become less important in the global picture because they're kind of countered back with this very conservative way of calculating. And this is coming from the fact that countries came out of the COVID-19 crisis just recently, and now the growth is picking up. So this is the reason for this, we believe, this cautious approach into designing the NDC commitments. Next slide, please. So, and if we go back to the research on the different groupings, we looked at the Pacific small island states, we looked at the Pacific G20, Asia Pacific G20, including those that are only like they're not full member. And we look at the LDCs and LDCs and emerging economies and other developing countries. I think you could look at this later on the online in the means of the time, but the picture is the same across the board, right? Next slide, please. So that way of calculating and making the scenarios is actually not aligned very well with the net zero commitment. So in our region, from the 53 member states, we have about 49 that have net zero or climate neutrality strategies, right? And we have 23 countries that have submitted low emissions development strategies. So these are not very well aligned with the latest updates, though in our region we have a lot of updates above 2. I mean, like about 12 to 13 countries have done more updates than 2, right, of the NDCs. We can go to the next slide. This is a nice way of showing, we call this a barometer, and showing that they're kind of, from these 12 countries that I mentioned, 3 are off track, but the others are kind of aligned with the net zero. So they just need to scale up a little bit more their commitment. Next slide, please. Also, we see that we did a deep dive into the sectoral commitments, and we see that there's also there quite a lot of room. So basically the green is where the green color is where the commitments should be per sector, but the orange is what is there in current emissions by 2019. Next slide, please. So basically, where we stand here, ESCAP is ready to help with technical support, mobilizing IBC members, working on the next review of the 2024 review of climate ambition. But we also are ready to work with individual countries to help technical design of some possible scenarios and see what are the gaps and how this could be aligned, right, based on the IPCC recommendation. Also to help them to align with their LT-LETs and net zero commitments, as well as developing better LETs as well. We're also helping with the GHG, sorry, I have a little bit of more on the list. GHG emissions inventories, ETRs as well. We're having 2 trainings this next month together with the UN Office on Sustainable Development, and we're also planning with the partners of the IBC more trainings in the late August. As well, in October, we're planning a big policy dialogue on NDC 3.0 with the CO Initiative Network on Green Growth that is supported by the Republic of Korea. We are looking into integrated mitigation adaptations approaches, also integration of NDCs with SDGs, where the convergence is, how this can be aligned with financial strategies. We also are supporting regional action program on air pollution, which is very much connected with the work we need to do on climate action. We're supporting NBS and Ocean Climate Action Dialogue, looking into the 3 major blue carbon ecosystems: mangroves, seagrass, and coral. We're also looking at the local climate action and resilience. There's a lot of cities in because we have a section on sustainable urban development. We're looking at plans that determined contributions plans at the local level. There's this ambition. And we are also working with all partners for enabling meaningful youth climate action and engagement with projects, proposals, working with local community, and getting actually a seat on the table of the NDC development. Next slide, please. And that is basically an overview of some of our publications, which you might have access after that to look at. And thank you very much. And we are ready to help you, the member states, in various ways. We've been actually talking to the Maldives Minister on Environment at the COP28. We've been talking to the Indonesian government as well, and some other governments. Thank you very much. I hope I managed to be in the 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Aneta, for this overview of the region vulnerabilities, also emissions profile, climate neutrality targets, but also the support provided by UN ESCAP. I just want to flag to participants on the call that this information will be shared, and we will have time for question and answers at the end of the panel. I would now like to invite Mr. Samit Bulut, Climate Change Specialist at the Asian Development Bank, to present the support available for the next round of NDCs. If I can kindly ask you to remain within the 3-minute mark so that we give countries to ask questions at the end, that would be very much appreciated. Over to you, Samit.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Perfect. So first of all, I would like to underline that since COP28, with the launch of the Climate Change Action Plan, ADB is the climate bank of Asia and the Pacific. And in this sense, we see that we have a critical role in terms of fostering a climate resilience, but also low carbon development going forward. So what is ADB doing and what have we been doing? So looking at the NDCs and LTS, because they are interrelated, ADB has an upstream technical assistance platform called NDC Advance, where we support the developing member countries in terms of how can they finance and implement the NDCs. And we are approaching this through 4 strategically linked streams. So first of all, translating NDCs into climate investment plans and projects. And this is what has been already also outlined by former speakers, but also improving access to climate finance and linking this specifically to the private sector. In addition to that, we have been doing work on MRV, so monitoring, reporting, and verification, but also supporting our developing member countries in terms of how to identify climate adaptation investment needs. And we have been engaged and are engaged in 22 developing member countries and are providing support in terms of capacity building, NDC revision, developing private finance mobilization roadmaps, looking at green economy, long-term transition, and developing also climate investment plans linked to concept nodes for a dedicated project pipeline. In terms of specific support that I want to underline, and here I want to draw the line between the NDCs and the LTS, what we are doing in the Philippines is ADB is planning to support the updated NDC on the one hand, but we are also working on the development of the long-term climate and development strategy for the Philippines. And why this is important is that while doing long-term transition, we have to also look at the NDCs because they can be seen as a roadmap towards long-term transition and form the pathway in terms of reaching the country's goal and the Paris Agreement. And in this sense, we're doing some preparatory analysis where we look at a review of climate change policies, institutions, and capacities to provide some recommendations going forward that will inform the LTS and the NDC at the same time. And in addition to that, we have launched together with the multi-development banks at COP28, the joint MDB LTS program, where we are supporting countries to develop their long-term strategies. And in this sense, we're currently in the funding phase. And going forward, what is ADB providing? So on the one end, looking at specific outputs, we're developing a knowledge product, which is an analysis of current NDC designs across sub-regions, and also taking lessons learned from that for the next generation of NDCs. In addition to that, we have partnered with the NDC Partnership to develop a subnational investment planning supplement for the investment planning and mobilization framework from the NDCP and the GCF. But we are also exploring internally how to mobilize additional funding for NDCs and LTS. And if you're interested, and ADB is very much looking forward to collaborate with all countries in our region, please reach out to Kate Huge. Below is the email. And we're looking forward to exchange further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samit, for a very valuable presentation and the wealth of information in a very short period of time. We're really grateful. Very important points on the investment plans, which we're hearing from countries, are something that they really require in the next phase for the NDCs, as well as the engagement of the private sector. And I think we really appreciate the alignment with the LT-LEDs across the board, so to make this as a holistic exercise. So thank you so much for this information. And again, this will be shared with you, the participants, as well as the contact information. Thank you once again, Samit, for this. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Ms. Zahra Mutiara from the GISET, a Senior Advisor for the ASEAN EU-German Climate Action Programme, for her intervention. Zahra, you have the floor.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Mary. It is a pleasure really to be among all of you today. Specific to the question, I will cover only a few slides to answer exactly what you want me to cover. But really, us from the ASEAN EU-German Climate Action Programme implemented by GIZ, see series of potential support that is on NDC enhancement as part of packages in terms of supporting countries in ASEAN post-global stocktake outcomes. Just a bit of a background also to let the audience here understand the scope and limit of our project. Our project is has the Environment Division of ASEAN Secretariat is as the main counterpart of the project, and the project has two commissioning parties that are the German government and the European Union, and the project itself is has 3 years of project duration since 2023, and its main objective is to improve the cooperation within the ASEAN context on implementing ambitious climate policies. Hence, we touch also the issue of NDC enhancement. To give also a bit of a background, some past support in the area of climate policy that we have been extending is, for instance, on the area of climate negotiation. We put forward this climate negotiation training for all ASEAN member states, the 10 countries. We put together a practical introduction to the negotiation with a focus on climate change, while also providing overview of agenda to be expected back then at COP28 UNFCCC. We also put together this discussion pre and post COP28 to exchange view on how science policy outcomes represented by IPCC AR6 and also the GST can complement our actions in the region. Another example is that we are supporting the engagement of ASEAN and the ASEAN member states at COP28, organizing multiple side events on regional climate policies and supporting delegates with logistical as well as substantial updates daily that are relevant for ASEAN on the dynamic of COP28 on site. So it's as our fellow audience can see, it's very much a regional perspective, a regional project with regional perspective. So when it comes to some ongoing and also upcoming support post-global stocktake of our project starting in 2024, there are 3 main components of support that we are extending to our ASEAN member states. First is on the study on the role of nature-based solution in NDC enhancement for ASEAN member states. Secondly, study dialogues and knowledge exchanges on loss and damage in ASEAN context, involving also other various ASEAN sectoral bodies, so to kind of define and understand where we are at when it comes to this very topic of loss and damage, as well as the last one on study and some knowledge exchanges among ASEAN member states on the process of enhancing NDCs. So these are something that we are supporting as of now, and also preparing for some series of activities regarding these three streams of support. So Mary, that is a glance of what we are doing. I am looking forward to be able to explain further context, or to be able to have more collaboration in Southeast Asia, especially ASEAN context. feel free to find my contacts here. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Zahra, for sharing information on how GISET is supporting ASEAN, not only in NDC enhancement, but also the overall climate portfolio. Particularly appreciate how there's dialogues on policy outcome in view of the best available science that's been called for with the global stocktake. And I think countries can really benefit from understanding in concrete terms what that means for the next round of NDCs. And also the work on nature-based solution, loss and damage in the context of the NDC. I think breaking down the silos from the different thematics and having the NDC as a policy document, which incorporates an overall vision, I think is very useful and can be a good practice. So thank you so much, Zahra, for this information. And again, colleagues will be sharing the slides as well as the contact information with you after the webinar. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Simon Ben Marazi from IRENA as Team Lead Technology and Infrastructure. Simon, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to directly deep dive into the specifics. Obviously, IRENA has been engaged in the previous cycle of NDC enhancement, supporting 83 countries, enhancing and also in the recent years implementing the NDCs. Distinguished guests, the upcoming round of NDC, as Simon still mentioned before, carried unprecedented significance. The global stocktake outcome from COP28 underscored the urgent need for new and ambitious economy-wide NDC aligned with the 1.5C limit. Achieving net zero emission demands, in our opinion and analysis, a fundamental shift in the energy landscape where IRENA has a lot of expertise for supporting NDCs. By 2050, 90% of the decarbonization will be driven by renewables coupled with other solutions. Our collective success hinges on strategic investment in affordable renewable power, energy efficiency, electrification, bioenergy, and green hydrogen. Those are the pillars of a clean energy future. To effectively measure progress, we must prioritize essential metrics: total power generated from renewables, their share in global production, the direct use of renewable energy, modern bioenergy adoption, improvement in energy intensity, sector-wide electrification, especially in end-use sector like transport and buildings, and green hydrogen production will be very important for the industrial sector. All those metrics need to be integrated and carefully thought at in the next generation of NDCs, and they are part of also on our tracking of COP20 outcomes with a tripling of renewable power by 2030. The fight against climate change also cannot be divorced from social and economic progress. A just transition must be included in NDC's preparation, meaning closing socioeconomic gaps, building resilient economies, and mitigating climate-related disasters. Policymakers in charge of NDC requires comprehensive frameworks that weave together environmental goals and social and economic progress. For maximize impact, people here on the table know it, NDCs must be deeply integrated within existing national policies. Also, aligning NDCs and the so-called LT-LEDs is crucial for guiding ambition, long-term climate action. Additionally, we learned that NDC must draw upon sectoral decarbonization models, socio-economic assessment, and robust monitoring and evaluation system to assure the effectiveness and also credibility for financing the conditional part. World-class climate action starts with leadership commitment and clearly defined institutional arrangement. Inclusive stakeholder engagement is paramount. Rigorous assessment of current progress alongside long-term goals will help identify areas for strengthening NDCs. Finally, adaptation, mitigation, and communication should be core components of the NDC 3.0. Innovation holds the key for our sustainable future. Cost-effective renewable energy technologies. energy efficiencies, and electrification offer immense potential. However, ensuring global participation means addressing the specific need of lower middle income countries reaching renewable potential. And therefore, targeted support is essential to empower those nations to play their part in updating NDCs with high ambition. The path to ambitious climate action is often perceived as complex, and the network of partners stands ready to support this journey for those countries and government. IRENA stands ready as a strategic partner. Our expertise can assist nations to navigate critical challenges, including awareness building around renewable energy role in national plan, integrating climate consideration into development plan, strengthening synergies between renewable, national development, climate goals, and NDC and SDGs, and many, many more. Let's not forget that climate action plan must emphasize resilience. Though the goals are intertwined, enhance energy security, support for vulnerable community, while reducing emission, and the adaptation of energy systems to mitigate climate risk. Renewables provide solutions that contribute to multiple climate and development objectives, allowing countries to maximize the impact while optimizing resources, and those can be flagged in the next generation of NDCs. Colleagues, the global stocktake, as mentioned before, highlighted the gap between current efforts and the ambition required to achieve the Paris Agreement goal. Immediate action on NDC 3.0 is therefore essential. We should focus on capacity building to equip countries so they can update themselves, their NDCs. Targeted initiative as well can strengthen and accelerate this enhancement toward 2025. And also, let's not forget, we need adequate funding to support this work. While our mission is global, it's imperative to remember that challenges and solutions are inherently local. Tailored support from organizations like we are hearing today and also in the future will be crucial in empowering nations to meet their climate goals and unlock the full potential of a clean, just future. I'd like to commend the organizers and colleagues for this vital webinar today. I think the diverse expertise shared provide a starting point for countries to develop the NDC 3.0 and NDCs. And by fostering collaboration and using the support system available, you can move closer to a future where ambition climate goal becomes a reality, driving both environmental sustainability and socio-economic progress. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you very much, Simon, for stating the support from IRENA, but also highlighting how important the energy sector is in previous NDCs, as many NDCs in Asia have included it in their NDC, and how important, given also the outcome of the GST, paragraph 28 on energy transition, will help countries to shape the energy decarbonization in the next round of NDCs. Really appreciate that, Simon. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Deo Gabinete from the NDC Partnership, Regional Manager for Eastern Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. Deo, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mary. Sorry, just loading the slides. Not sure if you can see it now.
Not yet.
They're visible.
No, okay. Go ahead, Deo.
Good afternoon. Oh, thanks again for inviting us to this webinar today. So just very quickly, the NDC Partnership launched this thematic support for as early as November 2022 to provide dedicated and readily accessible resources for our members for their 2025 NDC updating needs, as well as on developing LTLEDs and aligning those two policy documents together. To mobilize support in response to requests from countries related to NDC or LTS preparation, the thematic call will again primarily draw on members' resources and strengths as we had during the climate action enhancement package days, and establishing coordination arrangement with initiatives such as the 2050 Pathways Platform, the UNDP's Climate Promise 2, the MDB's LTS Facility, the HEAT Consortium, LTLEDs, Deep Dive Decarbonization Pathway projects, among many others. We are also offering complementary last resort funding mechanism through the Partnership Action Fund to strengthen members' responses when needed and to fill gaps where they exist. We also invite, through this thematic support, countries that have developed long-term visions or roadmaps to actually develop LTLEDs and to request assistance to begin on developing the full-scale LTLEDs. The thematic call consists of 3 streams of support. The first and second one are directly relevant for NDC preparation. So the first stream is related to preparatory support, and it's intended for governments to gain an understanding of the full scope of activities required to develop their LTLEDs, as well to update their NDCs, and to align these two together at the onset. The support is meant for countries who are interested in strengthening and the planning of their upcoming NDC update, or those who do not have yet an LTLEDs. The output of the support includes, among others, NDC preparation roadmaps, long-term visions, methodologies, impact assessments. We hope that the support from the stream will lead to future requests under streams 2 and 3. The second stream is on the development, update, and ambition enhancement, and supporting countries in submitting the first iteration of their NDCs or their enhanced NDCs, and then and the alignment of these 2 documents. The sample outputs from this could include the new and enhanced NDCs or LTLEDs, net zero scenarios, assessments for long-term climate risks and impacts. So on that slide, I have listed a longer list of sample outputs that countries can take advantage of from this dedicated support mechanism. I won't be going in detail in terms of the third stream of support, but nevertheless would like to also underline that it is quite critical that these 2 instruments, both LTLEDs and NDCs, are aligned well together, so that it would really define and provide comprehensive, clear guidance in terms of where and how investments related to your country's transition to low emission and climate resilient development is heading to. In terms of the processes involved, countries can request support from the thematic call to a regular request for support mechanisms. There is no deadline for requesting or submitting a request submission, and countries can submit multiple requests anytime. We've also added the opportunity for countries to submit initial expressions of interest if they are interested to submit a request, or guidance through the form we call pre-screening form. And this allows us to map out country interest very rapidly early on, even if the country doesn't yet know what it wants to request. Support unit, which means me and the rest of the team working under the NDC Partnership, will work with our country focal points to develop the requests. And once full requests for support are finalized, they are shared to all of the NDC Partnership members to a regular RSM request for support circulation. At this point, implementing and development partners, many of which are also present on this call, will respond and work together with the country. The support unit will coordinate the timely implementation of this work and ensure that multiple countries can engage with the country through the thematic call. We will be developing a joint work plan that will help countries to facilitate discussions between partners so that responses are coordinated and mapped against the requests that they have submitted, and also identify the terms for successful collaboration as it is laid out in the joint work plan. The work plan will also serve as a basis for tracking, monitoring, reporting, and extracting also lessons learned once the implementation starts. In terms of when and how soon support can start, it can vary largely depending on who will be responding to your request. So it could take any time between 3 to 8 months, or as soon as project agreements are set up with the different partners involved, including we are also, this is a different type of support, and this is related to the tool that we are working together with UNFCCC, and is tentatively called NDC 3.0. This tool is not meant to be prescriptive. It is also not meant to be the guidance, but it's a toolkit that would help countries understand how they can raise ambition of their NDCs, starting from scoping where they are and identifying options to raise ambitions, how to do it in ways that are implementable as well as financeable, all while incorporating the outcomes of GST. It will link to any existing guidance that exists or is being developed instead of replicating or duplicating them. We are currently interviewing stakeholders to collect inputs to ensure that the tool is as robust and comprehensive as possible. And we're expected to have an offline version by May 2024 and an online version by June 2024. So that's all from the NDC Partnership. So happy to answer any questions via chat or later during the discussion.
Thank you so much, Theo, for presenting the NDC Partnerships thematic call and also the toolkit, the NDC Navigator, and also walking us through the several steps. This was very useful. Again, this will be shared with countries and as well as the contact details. In the interest of time, I would now like to move to Mr. Krib Sitatani from UNDP Climate Promise, Regional Coordinator for Asia Pacific. I would kindly ask you to keep your intervention short so we can leave some time for the Q&A. Krib, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you once again to the UNFCCC Secretariat for this opportunity to share UNDP support to countries. So to quickly jump into my quick intervention is basically UNDP is again launching soon, launching the UNDP's Climate Promise 2025. This is a similar initiative that we launched back in 2019 to support enhancing of the NDCs across the globe. So many of you might have been a bit familiar with this initiative, so I'll dive right in. So what's at stake for this time around? So seriously, since 2023 is the hottest year on record, and also we're seeing widespread climate impact. So the stake has never been higher, really. And so why Climate Promise 2025? And why not before? But so before that, I wanted to take us to take a step back to see the progress we have made so far. In the first NDC, aggregately, we would have reached about 3.5 degrees. By the second NDC, around COP26 in 2021, we're now at about 2.5. What we're aiming to do is also support countries to come together as a global community and really raise the ambition to meet the ambitious target of 1.5 degrees on the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement in 2025. So that's where we are at the moment and why the stakes are so high. So what is the aim of Climate Promise 2025? Really, it's about, as I've said earlier, try to support the third generation of NDCs to achieve the 1.5 degree goals and also the SDGs. So what do we have on offer? This is divided into three main pillars, specifically on raising ambition and really accelerating NDC implementation. And thirdly, it's on inclusivity, making sure we leave no one behind. But for our focus for the Climate Promise 2025 in this year and next, it will be mainly focusing on ambition, really supporting countries to really review and revise and update their NDCs in the months ahead. So what is NDC enhancement? In essence, there are four simple, we like to think of them in four simple steps. First is the stock taking process, and then really getting the coordination and buy-in. And then thirdly, target setting and policy alignment. And lastly, looking at the costing and the means of implementation. So as UNDP, right now, this is currently a soft launch. The official launch will be in April. So we are also at the same time in parallel fundraising for this support to countries. So we're gonna start rolling out our support in sequence. So initial support starting next month in April will be on the stock taking. This is our initial support, but we'll expand on this support to include coordination, enhancement, and cost and means of implementation in hopefully by June of this year, and so on. So that's a very quick rundown of the UNDP's Climate Promise 2025. And if you have any question or anything you want to know more about it, please reach out to us. My email and my colleagues Jay Millet's emails here on this slide. And once again, we will share this slide with you all too. And you can also access for additional information on Climate Promise on our website as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for this excellent presentation. Also reminding us of the urgency for the need for enhanced ambition, and also UNDP's plan in terms of what you will be supporting, and also the timeline. I think that's very useful for countries to know. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
I would now like to move to Mr. Mozahabou Alam, the Climate Change Program Regional Coordinator from UNEP, for his intervention. I would also kindly request to keep your intervention short so that we close the meeting on time. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Thank you for invitation and sharing our thoughts on how the UNEP current portfolio will able to support raising the ambition of the NDC 3.0, particularly in the context of the aspect of the NDC. And you have already heard those elements, but I'm going to primarily focus on how our current portfolio can support the country to enhance or to raise their ambition. So when we are looking into the UNEP support to the countries, those are covering the 4 areas in the context of the NDCs. So one is related to the reporting and the transparency work that we are supporting. The second area of the work in the context of the sectoral the engagement. Then it is the NDC, the support implementation, but as well as the scientific and the policy research, which are also very important when we are talking about raising the ambition. But when we are looking into the overall, the support in the context of the different elements of the NDCs, and many colleagues have already talked about the issues of the data gap, the data fragmentation, the issue of the baseline. And we're looking into that when we're talking about raising ambition, there's obviously a robust baseline is necessary. And that also requires the analytical tools and the good data to use. And once we are able to use the analytical tools and the good data to use, we'll have a better the greenhouse gas emission projection, as well as the climate risk assessment, as NDC cover both the mitigation and the adaptation. And when we are looking into the support that we are providing, and other organizations and agencies are also providing the similar support. In the context of the data and the baseline, we can look into the assessment done under the biannual update report, the national communication, the biannual transparency report in the context of the greenhouse gas emission. And if we look into the climate risk assessment, is basically support the countries are receiving under the National Adaptation Plan, as well as the early warning system for all. So that is the first area that we thought where UNEP will be able to contribute through its ongoing program and the projects. The second area of the NDC is identifying the feasible climate actions, which include the sectoral assessment, while we know that the NDC is aiming to do the economy-wide the commitment and the raising the ambition. But for that one, what we need is the climate action, the interventions, and their potential to understand. And when we are looking into the ongoing program under the cooling, for an example, the Global Alliance for the Building and the Construction, the e-mobility, the RED+, as well as our support under the Finance Initiative and the GFANS, we see that the potential to identify which actions are feasible, including the sectoral assessment. Then we are looking into the whole aspect of the stakeholder consultation, and we see that the network that we already have at the national level as well as the regional level under, for example, the CBIT network, the CTCN, the Technology Needs Assessment, and many others, we can basically use those the network and leveraging the project partners to develop the consensus on what kind of the intervention is going to be more feasible and will help us to raise the ambition. And then it can lead to the whole aspect of setting the ambition, but also aligning with the national, the goals and the aspiration, as well as the international goals and targets. And by raising that ambition, that will also tell us that the adequacy of the support and ensuring the alignment with the national development. And if we look into the number of reports that we developed, for example, the gaps report that we call, that covers the mitigation gaps report, adaptation gaps report, as well as the production gaps report at the global level. But also we have the resource outlook for an example. So we can use that kind of the report and the analytical, the assessment report as a basis to see whether the national level ambition is sync with the international goal and target, particularly the Paris. Then the whole issue of the implementation of the NDCs and preparing for the implementation. And for preparing for the implementation, it's required obviously developing the action plans and building the institutional capacities. And when we are looking into the ongoing support, for example, the NDC Action Support Project, the Towards Zero Carbon Asia project, the CBIT, and the NAP. So we see that our ongoing support can help all the areas that is necessary to basically incorporate in the NDC and use this, the technical, what the UNFCCC, the colleague mentioned about this, the technically sound and the robust, the NDCs that we need to produce. So we see that kind of the packages that we'll be able to support through our ongoing the works. Let me just mention, this is the countries that you will see on the screen, the number of countries that we are supporting Asia and the Pacific, as well as in the other region. If we look into the CBIT, the Global Support Program, which is not only the UNEP involved, other UN agencies are also involved. You can also get the support through the CBIT, the Global Support Program on the climate transparency. In terms of the NDC implementation, right now we are supporting 3 countries in Asia, and the knowledge and the assessment that we have done, we feel that this is also very important inputs when the country will be developing their next generation of the NDC and utilizing the learning from their ongoing the work and the projects. Over to you, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this great presentation and also for providing the step-by-step approach for the next round of NDCs. I think that's very useful. Also highlighting how we can build on existing systems such as transparency and data information to enhance ambition in the next round. Again, I want to thank all the panelists for this very valuable round of information. All of this will be shared with you very soon. You have the links in the chat. And with that, I would like to hand over to Juhi.
Thank you very much, Mary, for this. Apologies again to the participants because we are running over time and won't have time for question and answers. But again, to remind you that the RCCs are here in the region to facilitate support. And we do encourage you to reach out to us and to the support providers as needed. Without any further time taken, I would like to introduce Mr. David McLaughlin-Carr, the Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific from the UN Development Coordination Office, for his closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Juhi. You hear me okay?
Yes, we do.
Great. Look, this has been fascinating, and I really personally, I was when I was listening to the Secretary General's address to the General Assembly in September, and he so passionately spoke of the planet being on fire and the need for member states to really double their action. It seems a little surreal to have this rather sort of staid webinar when there seems to be so many critical targets that are being missed, but also, you know, the projections for climate change being so dire that that we really do need to focus on this so seriously. So I greatly appreciate being here, but also being part of this UNFCCC webinar, just, you know, on the whole thing about how do we raise ambition on climate targets and NDCs. So let me thank the meeting organizers for including us in this conversation. It's been fantastic. And also engaging the UN resident coordinators from the Asia Pacific region in the conversation. Absolutely fundamental, their leadership role with country teams to work with governments and partners to really work on these NDCs. I'd also really like to thank the development organizations and support providers for their incredibly valuable inputs today and the valuable propositions that they've been made to support NDCs. And I think we all wish to thank Indonesia and the Maldives in particular that provided, you know, really concrete insights into their experience, which is not only useful and constructive in guiding the way ahead, but really good in terms of gauging best practices and peer exchange and learning, which I think is so critical across countries in the region and of similar typologies facing, you know, climate crises. As we learned, the COP28 outcomes have again iterated that we're not on track to keep the 1.5 degree goal and the Paris agreements within reach. And therefore, as the clarion call of the Secretary General and others is that we really need to raise the ambition, but also the alarm. And we cannot achieve this in a vacuum. And the ambition that needs to be informed, it has to be anchored in national development priorities. It has to be implementable and ultimately measurable if we're going to really create NDCs that are worthwhile. Just one comment, the Asia Pacific region is itself extremely uneven in terms of level of development. The vast region, you know, that we cover here, from all the way from Afghanistan and Iran through the smallest of the Pacific Islands, you know, encompasses countries with highly developed economies, higher income, middle income, but also a good degree of countries that are developing, that are also LLDCs, landlocked developing states, but also importantly, the small island developing states. And these, of course, are particularly vulnerable to climate change. So I think that this kind of exchange on a regional basis gives us the ability to look across typologies, but also to look at common problems and to reach common solutions. And the NDC, I think, presents an opportunity just not only to signal priorities in climate mitigation and adaptation, but also, you know, can help stimulate countries to look at each other and look at similar problems to raise ambition. I think NDCs in themselves are powerful strategic documents which can help to attract solutions and investments to tackle multifaceted crises. But it is also, you know, important that the document itself gives value add to galvanize the support that is available and to make sure that the fragmentation of effort is much more, shall we say, coherent. And I think here it's really important when we think that Asia Pacific not only is the most vulnerable region in terms of the effects of natural and man-made disasters, it has 2/3 of the world population. So we really need to work together on this. I think the interlinkages and synergies of acting on climate change are many, including those reduction of vulnerability to shock. But we need to enhance access to finance and financing streams to build resilience across the region. And I think the exponential impacts of a technically sound NDC are felt as tackling SDG 13 on climate action can contribute to every other sustainable development goal. And looking at it more holistically, it's not just SDG 13, but it's all 17 that are in play. Therefore, it's a need to accelerate efforts in producing enhanced targets, which are informed by the latest science, which also help us to accelerate implementation of existing commitments, and that will help us unlock finance at scale, which is so important. Other elements that we need to take into account, of course, are the urgency, the comprehensiveness, the ambition, the coordination and planning, and none of this is easy. But I think through the engagement of all and under the leadership of resident coordinators and working with stakeholders at the country level, we can achieve what we have agreed to achieve in the Paris Agreement in 2015. And I think this brings into play the concepts of whole of government, whole of society, and the leave no one behind rubric, which become more relevant than ever in this era of accelerating, enhancing the SDGs as well as the NDCs. But as you know, words and numbers on paper are insufficient. We need serious political support to come in behind the coherent technical cooperation piece. And we are encouraging countries in the Asia-Pacific region to engage with development organizations, to reach out and request for more support as technical support is required. As time is needed to prepare and communicate NDCs, which are country-owned, implementable, financeable, and as I said, ultimately measurable. And new NDCs are a blueprint for building a better world. And if the NDCs are the blueprint, I think resident coordinators, country teams, and the UN agencies, funds, and programs are its architects. Let me just conclude by saying that the UN resident coordinator role is crucial in supporting countries in their NDC journey, as they are already playing an instrumental role at the country level to promote the achievement of the SDGs. And moving forward, we will, at the regional office, be working with the UN FCCC, RCC Asia Pacific, and others to coordinate how best we can provide adequate support to the UNRC system in the Asia-Pacific region on the capacity building necessary for realistic NDCs. But just, a last message that the UN system itself must come together to leverage our mandates and expertise in mobilizing and coordinating. It's not just the RCs themselves, but the whole country teams need to work together at the global, regional, national levels to meet countries' needs and to be prepared for robust submissions in 2025. In this context, and it's so good that so many RCs have managed to join us today, but we'll be engaging UNCT, the host governments, partners, particularly civil society and the private sector, to continue to support implementation, to reduce harmful emissions and enhance the national coping mechanisms and resilience. So with that, I'd really like to thank you for your attention. It's been a very stimulating discussion, and I'll leave it at that. Warm greetings from Bangkok to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I think I cannot sum up anymore. Your words are very powerful, and we thank you for your energy and your dedication and your commitment to the climate cause as well. And we are standing here ready to support the countries and standing here with other support partners to work together. Before we conclude, I would like everyone on the panel to switch on their cameras for a moment so we can take a photograph of the group together. Because while we do this virtually, we do not want to miss the opportunity to actually at least mark the occasion. And if I may request our colleagues in Bonn to take the photo. Tafa Ayao.
Yep, I will take a picture.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Can I take a picture one more? Please smile. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joey. Thank you, colleague.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.